Most people are holding themselves back because they believe that they're being watched. A lot of people believe that they're being watched, they're being judged, they're being evaluated more than they actually are. And right now there's this quiet pressure to get things right, to look a certain way, to present yourself perfectly. Because somewhere in your mind, you believe that people care more than they actually do. You think that they care about how you look, they care about what you're doing, they care about your background. You think that people care about whether you're doing it right. But if you really look at it honestly, if you really take a good look at it honestly, most people are not paying that much attention. Nobody's paying attention. Not because they don't respect you, not because they don't acknowledge your existence, but because they're focused on themselves. People are just focused on their lives. They're thinking about their own problems, their own challenges. People are thinking about, you know, their own perspective. So while you are holding yourself back, while you are holding yourself back, trying to get everything right, trying to get everything perfectly, most people have already moved on. Most people have already moved on. And that realization can feel a bit uncomfortable at first, but it's actually freeing. It's actually freeing. If nobody cares, do you realize how free you are? You're not being watched the way that you think you are. You're not being analyzed at every level. You're not being judged at every second. And that pressure you feel is mostly coming from your own mind. So let me be clear with this. Let me be clear with this. This doesn't mean that people never really notice anything or notice anything about you. It doesn't mean that your actions don't matter. What it means is that you've overestimated how much space you can hold in people's mind. You've overestimated how much space you can occupy in other people's brains, right? You've been limiting yourself. You don't pose because of what people might think. You don't speak because of how it might sound. You don't move because it might not be perfect. So you stay at that level of preparation, in hesitation, in overthinking. Not because you're not ready. No, you are ready. You are ready. But it's because you believe that someone is watching you closely enough to judge your every move. But most of the time, they're not. Most of the time, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And even when they do notice something, even when they do notice something, it just passes quickly. People think about you for a moment and then they go back to thinking about themselves. They go back to thinking about their own lives. That's how it works. So the real question becomes, if nobody's watching you as closely as you think, what would you do differently now? What would you do differently? Would you speak more freely? Would you show up more consistently? Would you stop overthinking every small detail? Because the version of you that you are holding back, it's not being held back by your reality, but what's holding it back is your own perception of it. And once you see it clearly, something shifts. You stop performing. You stop trying to control how you're being perceived at every moment, and you now start moving. You start moving more naturally. You start moving more honestly. You become less concerned with being judged, and you become more focused on actually expressing yourself. And that's where things really start to open up. Not because people suddenly start caring, but because you stop caring about the wrong things. And that gives you space. That gives you a whole lot of space when you stop caring. It gives you space to create. It gives you space to speak. It gives you space to act. It gives you space to even experiment without that constant weight of imagined judgment. So no, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And that's not a bad thing. That's your freedom. That's your freedom because it means you don't need permission. You don't need any approval. You don't need to wait until everything is perfect. You can move now. Not when you feel ready, not when you feel more confident. Now. Because the thing that's been holding you back, it was never really there to begin with. It was never really there to begin with. And if this is your type of vibration, like, share, subscribe, because this is Spirit of Pula, the Spirit of Rain. Pula is the name.